We've captured another one. This is good. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see everybody bright and right on time, so I'll call this hearing to order. And this morning we will hear from three of President Trump's important nominees. I want to first welcome Mr. Sean McMaster, President Trump's nominee to serve as Administrator of the Federal Highway Administration, or better known as FHWA. FHWA is an operating administration within the U.S. Department of Transportation responsible for providing technical support, we lean on them a lot, and funding to states and local entities. The funding provided by FHWA is critical to facilitating the design and construction of improvements to our surface transportation network. These improvements enable the safe and reliable movement of people and goods, which enhances our quality of life and supports economic growth. Mr. McMaster's relevant professional experience makes him well qualified to serve as administrator. He brings more than 10 years of government service, working in the U.S. House of Representatives and at federal agencies, including the U.S. Department of Transportation. Since mid-2020, Mr. McMaster has worked for two private sector transportation companies. First, he served as a national practice consultant and vice president in HNTB, and most recently, he served as a vice president for commercial aviation and transportation at the Boeing Company. One challenge that the FHA administrator must quickly tackle is a significant backlog of announced grants that do not have signed grant agreements in place. This inherited workload will require diligence and collaboration to resolve. I'm hopeful that if Mr. McMaster is confirmed, his experience and leadership at FHWA will accelerate that process. This committee also looks forward to working with FHWA and others on the long-term bipartisan surface transportation reauthorization bill. Next, I want to welcome Mr. John Busterud, President Trump's nominee to lead the EPA's Office of Land and Emergency Management, better known as OLEM. Mr. Busterud's exceptional experience has prepared him to lead OLEM and tackle some of our nation's most pressing environmental challenges. Following a 31-year environmental legal career, he served as regional administrator of the EPA's Pacific Southwest region. Mr. Busterud also served our country with distinction as an officer in the U.S. Army, deploying many times and retiring as a decorated colonel after 23 years of service. OLEM's statutory responsibilities places at the center of EPA's core mission, protecting our air, land, and water. If confirmed, Mr. Busterud will oversee programs that directly impact America's health and the environment, such as remediating PFAS contamination, cleaning up Superfund sites, and revitalizing brownfields. Addressing PFAS contamination, which affects communities in my state of West Virginia and across this country, is a priority of mine. The EPA recently announced an agency-wide PFAS strategy, and OLEM will play a major role in ensuring its success. OLEM is also responsible for cleaning up Superfund sites, which are some of the nation's most contaminated sites. This committee recently heard about the challenges with cleaning up Superfund sites, and there's bipartisan support to improve the program's efficiency. I look forward to working with Mr. Busterud to implement key reforms to ensure faster and more cost-effective Superfund cleanups. Finally, I want to welcome Mr. Adam Telle, President Trump's nominee to be the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. Mr. Telle is well-suited to lead the Army Corps of Engineers Civil Works program based on his 2 decades of public service in the United States Senate, including as my clerk for the Homeland Security Subcommittee and as a special assistant to the President in the first Trump administration. Mr. Telle has seen firsthand how the Army Corps' response to natural disasters can help communities withstand significant weather events and then recover from them. The Army Corps does critical work across the nation through its navigation, flood risk management, and ecosystem restoration missions. This work protects the lives and livelihoods of millions of Americans and facilitates commerce throughout our country and internationally. If confirmed, Mr. Telle will also play an integral role in implementing biennial water resource development legislation, better known to all of us on committee as WRDA. WRDA authorizes numerous feasibility studies and projects and directs the Army Corps to carry out various activities to address our nation's water resources needs. I look forward to working with Mr. Telle to ensure the timely implementation of these laws consistent with congressional intent. And I look forward to hearing from all the nominees this morning about their experiences and the issues that they will prioritize if confirmed to lead these agencies. With that, I recognize Ranking Member Whitehouse for his opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Capito. We're here today to entertain nominations for top posts at the Federal Highway Administration, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the EPA office that administers the Brownfields and Superfund programs. Those responsibilities are particularly relevant to three major pieces of committee legislation that I hope we can pass this Congress: WRDA reauthorization, surface transportation reauthorization, and comprehensive permitting reform. I believe Chair Capito and I can continue the good bipartisan work this committee is known for in areas for which these three nominees will have direct executive responsibility. But here's the rub. None of these bipartisan bills will matter if Congress's Article 1 authorization and appropriation power is not respected. And this administration has repeatedly, unlawfully disrespected congressionally authorized and appropriated spending. I am happy to see that DOT appears to be making progress, obligating money to previously awarded discretionary grants. And I thank the chair for her diligent pursuit of that progress as well. However, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program remains paused and stuck in limbo. At the Army Corps, erratic, inconsistent, and opaque administration of its Clean Water Act permitting program creates uncertainty for the regulated community at large and for renewable energy project developers in particular, undermining core principles of fairness and neutrality in the Corps' permitting program. I have called to restore integrity and transparency to the Corps' permitting program and to evaluate each permit action on its own merits in accordance with law and regulation, with no response. And EPA, where even to begin? Administrator Zeldin continues his assault on clean air and clean water, despite his promises to us in this committee to protect air and water. His list of congressionally authorized and appropriated funding that EPA insists on continuing to hold hostage is too long to list here today. Obviously, the biggest target is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, where Administrator Zeldin and his enablers at DOJ continue to set themselves up for legal and professional liability in the way they conduct their assault on that program. I have told my team to start work on common sense bipartisan legislation in all three areas. But the gateway to success, to ultimately passing those bills, is confidence that this administration will faithfully execute the laws we pass and clear the projects we have already approved, appropriated, and obligated. It won't work in permitting reform, for instance, to exclude wind and solar from the very definition of the word energy, violating not just the law, but the dictionary. I should add in closing that we are also now faced with an effort to use the Congressional Review Act to disapprove 3 Clean Air Act waivers granted by EPA to the state of California that have existed for many years. Even though the parliamentarian has already ruled that these waivers are not rules as required for the CRA. A decision to overrule her on this matter to deploy the nuclear option will have real consequences. The misuse of the CRA to undo long ago passed policies, adding to the nuclear option of overruling the parliamentarian, open up an immense can of worms, and the Senate floor will not be the same if this is where we go. Overruling the parliamentarian is tantamount to eliminating the filibuster, said Leader Thune himself in January. There are many avenues for the minority to respond to such a disruption of Senate tradition. Simply count how often the presiding officer says, without objection, on any given day, to understand what the response could be to such a disruption. If this is the path Republicans want to go down it at least with eyes wide open. And also, on the merits, know that climate change is not a hoax, that its damage has already begun in homeowners' insurance markets around the country, that the insurance to mortgage to property values collapse can't be stopped by rhetoric, and that the sand is fast running through the hourglass to head off that economic calamity. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse, and we'll now turn to introductions for the nominees. And this morning, we are joined by our friend from Tennessee, Senator Hagerty. Thank you for being here, and please proceed with your introductory remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Capito, and thank you, Ranking Member Whitehouse, for holding today's hearing. It's my distinct honor to introduce my good friend and my Chief of Staff, Adam Telle, who is President Trump's nominee for Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. But before I introduce Adam, I'd like to actually address all the staff that sit behind you, because I want you to look at Adam, somebody who's been here serving as you do in the United States Senate for the past 20 years. He's made a real impact working here in the Senate, as I'm sure all of you do, working night and day and over the weekends, as I'm sure all of you do as well. And now he's going to take that knowledge, that expertise, that experience, and move on to do even greater things. And so I hope you take Adam's nomination today as a great inspiration for what you yourself might do. I'll encourage you in that regard. And I also would take the privilege of suggesting that Senator Capito probably shares the same sort of pride that I do in seeing Adam's progress, because Adam worked for you, you helped train him to become the person that he is today. As you all know, the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works provides leadership that's essential for the Department of Defense and for our nation, especially the American citizens and American businesses who depend on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The Corps is tasked to maintain 13,000 miles of coastal navigation channels, 12,000 miles of inland waterways, over 1,000 harbors, 745 dams, just to name a few of the Corps' responsibilities. As a native of Northport, Alabama, who graduated with honors in computer science and communication from Mississippi State University's Bagley College of Engineering, Adam has lived in places where the mission of the Army Corps is at the forefront of public life. Adam can directly relate to the people who depend on the Corps, and he knows firsthand why the work of the Corps matters. Adam's also served in the U.S. government faithfully and with distinction for the past 2 decades. After beginning his Senate career in the office of Senator Richard Shelby of Alabama in 2005, Adam spent 10 years in the office of the late Senator Thad Cochran of Mississippi, earning the roles of Deputy Chief of Staff and Legislative Director. Adam then served as the lead staffer on the Homeland Security Subcommittee of the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee, serving under the chairmanship of Senators Thad Cochran, Richard Shelby, John Bozeman, and of course, our chairman, Shelley Moore Capito. In this role, Adam was the point person in the Senate for the U.S. government's activities involving nearly 20 agencies, 260,000 personnel, and an annual budget of approximately $70 billion. During President Trump's first term, Adam led the Senate team at the White House's Office of Legislative Affairs, where he managed national security and appropriations matters. He played critical roles in the negotiations for the historic Abraham Accords and the creation of the U.S. Space Force, which is the first new branch of the U.S. military created and authorized in more than 70 years. Over the last 4 years, I've had the privilege of watching Adam in action on a daily basis, particularly as my Chief of Staff. Adam's leadership is evident not just in his strategic vision and passion for our nation, but also in the ways in which he is trusted by staff and by other colleagues. The kindness, the mentoring, and the heart that he demonstrates with his teams will make him an inspirational leader of this critical organization. Adam is just the leader that our nation needs in the Pentagon right now. I urge the committee to move quickly in consideration of Adam Telle's nomination so he can assume leadership in this important work as soon as possible. And I want to thank all of you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful introduction. So I will now ask the nominees to move up to the witness table when Senator Haggerty clears. You can remain standing for a minute, yeah. Before we move to the opening statements, I would like to administer the oath for their sworn testimony. So if you'd please stand and raise your right hand and answer the following question. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give to this committee is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Start with you, Adam. Thank you. Let the record show that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative, so we will now proceed to our opening statements, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Mr. Telle, you can begin.
Thank you, Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, members of the committee, and the staff of the Environment and Public Works Committee. It is an honor to have been nominated by President Trump to serve as the 14th Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. I want to begin by thanking President Trump, whom I was honored to serve during his first administration. In addition, I would like to thank Secretary Hegseth, Secretary Driscoll, my family, my wife Shelby, my two beautiful children who are here in the back, my mother Rita, and my father Whitney. I would also like to thank the U.S. Senators with whom I've worked the closest over the last 20 years. Chairman Capito, Senator Wicker, Senator Bozeman, Senator Richard Shelby, Senator Thad Cochran, and finally, Senator Bill Haggerty, whom I've had the privilege to serve over the last 4 years since he came to the Senate. Senator Haggerty, you have given me incredible perspective during our time together, and I'm so fortunate to have had a front row seat as you brought the same fresh perspective to the Senate. Thank you. In 1802, as President Thomas Jefferson was contemplating how to expand our nation westward, he keenly understood that our waterways would be the key. To harness the power of these waterways, he turned to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, which was producing America's best engineers. We would no longer rely on European engineers, and the original navigation mission of the Army Corps of Engineers was born. The America we know today, from sea to shining sea, is a result of the work of the Corps. And over time, Congress has given the Corps additional missions, primarily flood control and the preservation of natural resources. These missions are also important to our current president. Some of my earliest memories as a young child are of riding with my father, him pointing out the window as we were crossing some of our waterways. The Black Warrior River, the Tennessee Tom Bigby Waterway, the Mississippi River. He was always teaching, and he would turn my attention to the little tugboats pushing the big barges, brimming with natural resources, opening access from the small communities in our neck of the woods to the rest of the country and to the world. 20 years later, I moved to Washington because I believed that I could make a difference, helping to represent the views and interests of the Americans I grew up with, who often felt ignored or forgotten by important people in Washington. On August 29th, 2005, exactly 1 month into my time working in the Senate, Hurricane Katrina made landfall. This was the most costly natural disaster in American history. I stayed up all night that night. I couldn't go to sleep watching Hurricane Katrina come ashore. A 28-foot storm surge, 1,800 American lives lost, and hundreds of billions of dollars in damage. Pretty soon, Senator Thad Cochran asked me to run point on Mississippi's recovery from Hurricane Katrina. My years of experience securing resources and untangling bureaucratic messes in the wake of Katrina prepared me for my role as a top Homeland Security staffer on the Senate Appropriations Committee, where I was also given the top role, working for Chairman Capito and Chairman Bozeman, and advising all Senate Republicans on disaster recovery and response. These formative experiences as a child and as a young professional are emblematic of why my personal background and passion match the depth and the breadth of the missions of the Army Corps of Engineers Civil Works mission, enabling commerce, mitigating floods, responding to disasters, and most recently by removing debris in the wake of Hurricane Helene and in response to the Los Angeles wildfires. Few government agencies' missions capture the interests of the American citizens, landowners, communities, states, job creators, and the representatives here in Washington quite like this one. These are real missions with real outcomes, and they matter deeply to Americans in places that are very far away from Washington decision makers. If confirmed, I intend to aggressively tackle the critical issues that confront the Corps. As it relates to permitting, we're at a moment in history where all Americans of all viewpoints crave certainty from their government about whether or not the rules apply to them. We must act with haste, transparency, and clarity to give them regulatory certainty without delay. As I mentioned, navigation was the original mission of the Corps. Today, maintenance and construction of our coastal ports and inland waterways will help define how competitive we are and how resilient we are in the 21st century. With regard to flood control, we must work together to maintain the investments that you have made and complete new projects as soon as humanly possible to mitigate floods before they happen and to fight them when we must. When it comes to coordination, issues related to water are spread across federal entities and authorities perhaps like no other. Getting it right for the American public will require an outsized focus on coordination among dozens of entities across the government that deal with water. If confirmed, I will devote significant attention to collaboration and coordination across these partner agencies. I'm honored to be before you. If I have the honor of being confirmed by the Senate, I commit to be responsive to our nation's politically accountable leaders, the President, the members of this committee, the members of the Senate, and the members of the House of Representatives. Thank you, Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Before I go to Mr. McMaster, could your family stand up so we can see them? Because I know your kids are little. Are they back there?
Oh, they're currently in the hall, I'm told. I'm sorry.
They're in the hall.
I'm sure they're
wow,
standing.
You've got them really well trained. Okay, our next nominee is Mr. Sean McMaster. Mr. McMaster is President Trump's nominee to lead a critical agency, the Federal Highway Administration. Welcome, Mr. McMaster.
Thank you, Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today as you consider my nomination for FHWA. I am grateful to President Trump and Secretary Duffy for the opportunity to serve in this position. If confirmed, I look forward to working with you to achieve the President's and the Secretary's vision of building big, beautiful American infrastructure. With me today is my amazing wife, Brittany, and two of my three children, Grady and Emerson. I would also like to mention my oldest son, Connor, who couldn't be here today. He is a newly minted Lance Corporal in the United States Marine Corps, serving our country as an air traffic controller in California. Without their tireless support and understanding, the commitment required to serve would not be possible. We must work to build and restore the big, beautiful roads, bridges, and tunnels across the nation. The Federal Highway Administration's 2024 National Bridge Inventory data shows that more than 83,000 out of 147,000 bridges on the national highway system are in fair or poor condition. While we have made progress advancing these priorities, the current state of our critical infrastructure must further be improved. If I am confirmed, I will work tirelessly to support the Secretary's efforts to manage this challenge, this work, and all work under my leadership. If confirmed, I will be guided by my top priority and the top priority of the department, safety. As the transportation industry is painfully aware, delays in project delivery can delay safety enhancements and drive up project costs. Data from FHWA's National Highway Construction Cost Index show that transportation construction costs have increased by 67% over the last 3 years reported, from 2021 to 2024. I saw firsthand these impacts to cost, schedule, and delivery of essential infrastructure projects during my time at HNTB, working directly with state and local leaders as they were challenged to identify and attain federal funding in time to support their critical transportation infrastructure needs. It is essential we build projects more quickly and efficiently. We must further streamline project delivery, including the permitting process. And if confirmed, I look forward to working with the Secretary and the Congress on ways to improve efficiency and reduce costs, so more of the funds being invested in our infrastructure will go to building infrastructure. I know from experience this is achievable. While I served at the Department of Transportation during the first Trump administration, the I-85 bridge in Atlanta reopened less than 7 weeks after a fire caused its devastating collapse in March of 2017. Thanks to emergency relief funds from FHWA, the bridge was quickly rebuilt using innovative components and state-of-the-art concrete. Significantly, the bridge reopened ahead of schedule, demonstrating that time and cost savings are attainable. This is an important moment for FHWA. In addition to its ongoing work, FHWA must also look forward as the current Surface Transportation Authorization, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, is set to expire at the end of September 2026. Surface reauthorization is vital for maintaining and enhancing the safety of our nation's roads, bridges, and tunnels. It provides U.S. transportation infrastructure with policy direction and consistent multi-year funding. While I served as Deputy Chief of Staff at the department, I was fortunate to lead the development of its surface reauthorization proposal that included FHWA. Through this work, I met with key stakeholders to understand the needs and impacts of the reauthorization on our states and local communities. This committee has already started its critical work on surface transportation reauthorization, and Secretary Duffy appeared before this committee last month to discuss these efforts. If confirmed, I look forward to working with the Secretary and Congress throughout the reauthorization process so that we can realize a golden age of transportation. As the administration and Congress embark on this transformation through the accelerated deployment of critical projects, further reductions in red tape, common sense solutions for infrastructure needs, and reauthorization legislation, it is critically important we fully understand the unique challenges affecting states throughout the country. Through meetings with state and local transportation leaders during my time at the department and at HNTB, it is clear that states have a unique understanding of their specific needs. FHWA maintains strong partnerships with states nationwide, and if confirmed, I will continue to support those critical partnerships and work to ensure the states receive consistent guidance and support from FHWA. Thank you for your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McMaster. And our final nominee this morning is Mr. John Busterud. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, Senator.
Close enough?
Yes.
Mr. Busterud is President Trump's nominee to lead the EPA's Office of Land and Emergency Management. If confirmed, Mr. Busterud will oversee vital programs like the Superfund and brownfields to ensure efficient and effective management of our nation's land and waste issues. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, and all the distinguished members of this committee. It has been a privilege to meet with you and your staff to learn about the issues of highest concern to you. I intend to work with all of you to ensure that we protect human health and the environment for all Americans. I humbly appear before you, nominated to serve as EPA's Assistant Administrator of the Office of Land and Emergency Management. I'm grateful to President Trump and Administrator Zeldin for giving me the opportunity to lead the men and women of Olin. If confirmed, I look forward to working with our dedicated career staff, states, communities, and stakeholders to ensure Olin fulfills its core statutory mission to clean up historic sites, prevent releases, and respond with urgency and compassion when emergencies arise. In this way, Olin provides an essential connection between environmental protection and economic prosperity, a linchpin of this administration. This morning, I'm accompanied by my wife, Gretchen, herself a retired EPA attorney and a great source of personal inspiration and support. Our grown children, Becky and Tommy, are here in spirit. I come to you with a background of commitment to public service and environmental protection. Growing up in Northern California, I was profoundly influenced by my father, also John Busterud, who served in the California legislature and later as chairman of the Council on Environmental Quality under President Ford. Environmental issues were often front and center at the dinner table and took precedence over partisan politics, at least as far as I can remember. After law school, I chose to practice environmental law, representing businesses who saw environmental compliance and leadership as essential business functions, valuable to their customers, employees, and shareholders. In that role, I worked with state and federal regulatory agencies, advocacy organizations, communities, and our state legislature to support policies that sought to balance environmental protection with a sustainable business climate in California. After retiring from corporate practice, I served on the board of the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance, a public policy organization with members from Fortune 500 companies and labor unions. CEB works to find common sense, bipartisan solutions to emerging environmental issues. I was also privileged to serve our country as an officer in the Army Reserve, deploying to Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Djibouti in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, and retiring as a colonel in 2014. In Baghdad, I had the unique opportunity to advise the Iraqi Minister of Environment as she developed Iraq's first environmental regulatory programs. This service not only provided some of the most fulfilling experiences of my life, but taught me that the rule of law is central to peace, prosperity, and environmental protection. In the first Trump administration, I was honored to serve as Regional Administrator of EPA Region 9. As RA, I worked with 600 dedicated career staff and Administrator Wheeler to protect human health and the environment for 50 million Americans in California, Nevada, Arizona, Hawaii, 148 tribes, and the Pacific Territorial Islands. My experience in Region 9 was one of the highlights of my career, and I'm looking forward to working again with all our regions to support the offices that are truly the face of EPA across our nation. If confirmed, I will be responsible for implementing some of the most forward-facing programs at EPA. As much as any other office at the agency, OLM affects Main Street America in many tangible and beneficial ways. The Superfund program, both at civilian and federal facilities, remediates sites to provide essential protections for land and groundwater. The popular Brownfields program literally addresses environmental conditions on Main Street across our country, restoring urban lands to productive use. RCRA and underground tank programs ensure that we do not create future Superfund sites by preventing releases of hazardous materials from currently operating facilities. The Office of Mountains, Deserts, and Plains uses a cross-media, cross-agency approach to address abandoned hard rock mines. And finally, the Office of Emergency Management works alongside other federal agencies, states, cities, and communities to plan for and respond to emergencies. Through these programs, OLM has the opportunity to provide essential human health and environmental protections for all Americans, and to do so in a nonpartisan, common-sense manner that promotes our great American comeback. I look forward to working with all of you to fulfill this mission. Thank you, Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, and all the members of this committee. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate that. Before we begin with questioning from each member, there are 3 standing yes or no questions that I will ask all of the 3 of you, if you could just respond. Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear before this committee or designated members of this committee and other appropriate committees of this Congress to provide information subject to appropriate and necessary security protections with respect to your responsibilities?
Yes, Senator.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you agree to ensure that testimony, briefings, documents, and electronic and other forms of communication of information are provided to this committee and its staff and other appropriate committees in a timely manner?
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. Finally, do you know of any matters which you may or may not have disclosed that may place you in a conflict of interest if you are confirmed?
No.
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 Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to start my round of questions, and I'm going to start with Mr. McMaster. You mentioned bridges, and I think you and I talked about bridges in when we had our meeting in the office, and I appreciate all of you for coming to visit. Our geography requires to have a lot of those bridges. So we need a strong federal partner in the FHWA. It's critical to our success. You know, a lot of progress was made and has been being made with the IIJA, but are there any policy and funding proposals that we should consider including in the next reauthorization, which we're beginning work on, to further address regionally significant or bridge projects?
Yes, Senator, I appreciate the question. I know you've...
Is your microphone on?
It is, sorry.
Okay.
Senator, I appreciate the question. I know you've been a champion for bridges, for the Federal Highway Administration. Bridge safety is a paramount importance issue. It's critical to the safety of our traveling public. It's critical to our supply chain. As we look to support reauthorization, there is work still yet to be done. Tremendous progress over the last few years. When I served at HNTB, I was fortunate to work in support of the Brent Spence Bridge, which after 20 years is now finally realizing development. I look forward to supporting you if I'm confirmed. I know it's of paramount importance for the Federal Highway Administration, and I look forward, if confirmed, to supporting your efforts through reauthorization to identify additional ways we can accelerate the maintenance and enhancement of our nation's bridge on the highway system.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Busterud, addressing PFAS is a top environmental priority that I share with Administrator Zilda, and I think they're making some announcements today. I was pleased to see the EPA release an agency-wide plan setting bold goals to tackle this crisis. If confirmed, you will be responsible for leading OLM's major role in this strategy, from updating PFAS destruction guidance to enforcing the polluter pays principle. How would you lead in this way and help us tackle this very difficult and far-ranging problem of PFAS contamination?
Well, thank you, Chairman. PFAS is a high priority issue for EPA, and the administrator on April 28th, as you noted, announced a suite of programs basically taking a whole of EPA approach to addressing PFAS across its major program offices. As you noted, and as we discussed in our conversation in your office, OLM will play an important role to increase the frequency of guidance we give on PFAS destruction. It has been every 3 years. We're going to commit to providing those updates on an annual basis, and there was great interest in that. OLM will also look at it and examine its RCRA authorities to prevent releases of PFAS from manufacturing facilities and other facilities which use PFAS. And you mentioned the polluter pays issue, and I support that entirely. And we will continue with that approach. The notion of passive receiver, the issue of passive receiver, is very important to a number of senators on your committee and others. That is an issue that, if confirmed, I pledge to work with our dedicated career staff and to look at ways in which we can avoid a situation in which customers of water utilities would be forced to pay for contamination they didn't put in the water to begin with. And I look forward to working with your committee on that.
Great, thank you, thank you. Mr. Telle, we had a hearing on Corps of Engineers and the implementation of some of their programs. This is a daunting challenge, I think, to step into the position that you're in, because the slowness and the sluggishness of some of the work that we know is critical is, I think, universally felt by all of us. So, and this goes to the fact that the Army Corps is actively working on nearly 100 ongoing feasibility studies and general reevaluation reports. These will result in projects later on, as you know, in authorizations and appropriations. How will you ensure that projects and other activities are appropriately prioritized in work plans and balance the competing water resources in the country?
Chairman Capito, you've identified the fundamental issue as it relates to this nomination, which is this is a complex and exhaustive set of challenges. The demand for the Corps' work is greater than the supply. The Congress is incredibly interested in the projects and the work of the Corps of Engineers, as you have identified. And the core principle, and when it comes to prioritization in a constrained budget environment, is to follow the law. And the law says that the Corps' primary missions are navigation, enabling commerce on America's waterways, flood mitigation and control, and environmental aquatic ecosystem restoration. And so those have to be the primary beacons when it comes to prioritization, examining how the projects meet those missions as the Congress has laid them out, setting priorities on the basis of benefits versus costs, life and safety, and other factors that ultimately will play into all these decisions, and it's a complicated one.
Thank you. Senator Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. Mr. McMaster, the chair and I both intend to deliver to you a robust bipartisan surface transportation reauthorization. As we discussed in my office, in order for that to happen, we need assurances that whatever bipartisan legislation we write and get enacted into law will be implemented by the executive branch in a faithful and unbiased way. And in particular, we need to clear the illegal funding freezes that have jammed up so many already appropriated projects. Will you commit to implementing any and all authorized programs in a faithful and unbiased manner?
Senator, I appreciate your comment and your question. It's an important one. I give you my full commitment, if I'm confirmed, to implement the law with the intent of Congress.
You understand how it would be hard for the minority to agree to a bipartisan bill if the upshot of that agreement was that only the majority's parts of the bill were actually implemented and everything that we wanted got binned by the executive branch.
Senator, I appreciate your comments. I think as the Secretary pointed out, infrastructure is not partisan. And you have my full commitment to implement the law in accordance with the intent of Congress.
Thank you. Mr. Telle, I have referred to the Army Corps of Engineers as the bureaucratic tributary of the Mississippi River. That's a rhetorical point that I make to highlight the extent to which the Army Corps appears to favor inland over coastal flooding projects. We've looked back at the inland and coastal flooding account at the Army Corps, and its best year was $20 for inland for every $1 for flooding coastal, right? That was our best year as coastal states. Worst year was $100 for inland flooding for every $1 for coastal flooding. Rhode Island's sea level is up about 11 inches. That's not a debatable proposition. You measure that the same way you measure the height of your kid on the doorway. It's really simple. It's inches and rulers. And so we have real coastal flooding issues. And I would like your assurance that you will take these inland versus coastal concerns seriously as coastal flooding becomes more and more of a danger for coastal communities.
Senator Whitehouse, thank you for raising this issue, and I look forward to and am eager to, if confirmed, make sure we have our hands around this data and understand it. I think historically, the riverine flooding has been easier to predict, perhaps, than the locations of coastal flooding, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't invest as much as a greater amount in coastal flooding. This is obviously an issue that's been near and dear to my heart, working on hurricane recovery my entire career, as well as inland flooding, riverine flooding. But I would just say, I think you're right. As we work to justify and prioritize, as Chairman Capito mentioned, the projects that are of the greatest benefit to the public, we have to be able to consider things that have in the past been unpredictable and try to predict them more accurately. Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, I'd also add that FEMA's mapping has been such a flagrant disaster that states like mine have had to do their own flood mapping because FEMA's mapping simply wasn't worthy of belief. You don't have to look much beyond FEMA's flood mapping of the Houston area versus the actual flooding, repeated flooding in the Houston area, which is a really big area in the last decade, to see how bad FEMA's mapping has been. So part of the problem is to fix the mapping as well as to fix the priorities. So I look forward to working with you on that.
Senator, if I may really quickly, this is an issue I've worked on in the past, and I would say there is a great deal of frustration in the public around FEMA's mapping programs. It's not something that I will be in charge of if confirmed, but certainly something I will work on.
But to the extent that you rely on them, you need to go in eyes wide open that they're a failure.
One of the frustrations that the public has had about FEMA's maps is it doesn't adequately consider flash flooding, rainstorms. It only considers storm surges in many cases, and it doesn't adequately consider flood control infrastructures. So these are issues that have to be addressed in order to give the public confidence in the government's product.
I'd also like to work with you and the chairman on a priorities list where committee members who feel that a project has gotten lost in the Army Corps' bureaucracy can get a regular scheduled briefing from the Army Corps where we put our projects on that list, and you know that those projects are on that list, and you're going to have to come in and report to us on them on a regular basis so that projects that are important to members of this committee get the attention that they deserve.
Senator, when Congress passes a law and the president signs it, there's some expectation that it be followed, and I look forward to working with you on that.
Good. Well, this is an issue where the chair and I are going to need to work together and agree, but We would certainly urge that senior Army Corps folks turn up for those briefings on those projects once we've sorted out what that looks like.
And I would add the second question that I asked you all with timely responses back. There's nothing more frustrating, no matter who's in charge, to not get an answer. And that happens, and it is very frustrating. So we'll go to Senator Ricketts.
Thank you, Chairman Capito and Ranking Member Whitehouse for holding the hearing today, and welcome to all of our nominees. Congratulations. I chair the Subcommittee on Fisheries, Water, and Wildlife and sit on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and I look forward to learning from you, each of you, how you plan to serve Nebraskans and Americans in your new roles should you be confirmed. The Endangered Species Act is a law that impacts each one of you as nominees. Mr. McMaster, you and I shared with you my concerns about the American burying beetle and its impacts on infrastructure. Mr. Telle, you heard about the piping plover and the pallid sturgeon and its impacts on the Missouri River and the Platte River. And then Mr. Busterud, you're no stranger to NEPA compliance. I would like each one of the nominees to talk a little bit about how you plan to implement the ESA in a way that promotes species protection and recovery, but is not prohibitive to the work in your respective offices. And Mr. Telle, maybe we start with you.
Senator, thank you for the question. I detected a bit of frustration from you, and I've detected it from the public over my time working here in the Senate about when the law is applied on the basis, or decisions are made within the government on the basis of something that the government did before. And I think that's the case here with the species you're talking about, where the government's work actually increased the habitat and then created a problem where before it didn't exist. And so we have to be better at predicting these things and having a comprehensive management plan that looks at second and third order effects of the government's work and gets it right. And when we don't get it right, correct it as quickly as possible instead of ignoring the problem. Thank you, Senator.
Hey, Senator, I appreciated the conversation the other day. I'll say the administration has a strong process, a robust process and way to find ways to expedite project delivery, but at the same time respect and conserve the environment in that process. If I'm confirmed, I look forward to learning more from you on these specific issues you raised in person, working closely with the Federal Highway Administration in partnership with the state to make sure that those environmental challenges are conserved, maintained, and respected while we look to move projects forward quicker, faster, and better for the benefit of the state and the country. Thank you.
Senator, based on my environmental legal experience, and I would bring that to bear here with EPA, I believe that early consultation and engagement on endangered species issues in the planning phase before shovels even go in the ground is essential in terms of planning out an expedited schedule that is not impaired by the presence of either critical habitat or listed species.
Great, thank you. Under Chairman Capito's leadership, we are beginning to work on the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill and are focused on improving efficiency in the system. I've heard from Nebraskans that one reason projects are significantly slowed is that too many agencies are required to take action to approve a single project. Often these approvals are being done consecutively instead of concurrently, adding unnecessary delays to project implementation. Mr. McMaster, how important is streamlining processes to deliver on timely project delivery, and what can Congress do to help?
Yes, Senator, I appreciate that question. It's a tremendous priority of this administration to find ways to move projects faster and better and more cost effectively. I'll say this tremendous backlog, the historic backlog of grant awards that are awaiting grant agreements, in no small way is a tremendous priority that needs to be addressed. Over the last couple of weeks, we've seen 2 different tranches of backed awards that totaling more than $5 billion in this effort. The Secretary is also interested in reducing the regulatory burden on these awards and future awards so that when we say we want to build, we're able to build and we're able to build more cost effectively. In addition, the administration is looking at updating its guidance on NEPA and then looking for additional streamlining provisions. So if confirmed, I look forward to working closely with you and the Congress as you engage in your efforts to reauthorize the surface transportation programs.
Right. I'm running out of time here, but Mr. Telle, Obviously, as governor, I sat through a 500-year flood in Nebraska in 2019. Can you tell us how you can work with sister agencies like Fish and Wildlife to ensure the management of the Missouri River Basin prioritize people and property to make sure we're protecting life when we have those 500-year floods?
Senator Ricketts, thank you for the question, and thank you for your leadership as governor during that flood that affected large swaths of the country, and especially Nebraska. With the Missouri River, which I told Senator Fisher yesterday is America's longest river, edging out the Mississippi by 1 mile, it requires management from Montana all the way to Missouri, and your state is right in the middle. And there are competing interests that have to do with navigation interests and flood control interests up and down the system, as well as water supply interests, especially in the farther west reaches of the river. And so it's a challenge. And the Corps of Engineers often has to make decisions about whether agricultural interests and weigh those against commercial interests and weigh those against life and safety interests. And I would just say that life and safety and the protection of property has to always be a primary concern as these issues are balanced. The Corps of Engineers has manuals that dictate how they operate these facilities, but Senator, I think our elected leadership, our politically accountable leadership, I think there's an expectation that they'll use good judgment in times of crisis like this one to deliver the best result for the public, and I hope that we can get it right.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Ricketts. Excuse me, Senator Padilla. Just had Senator Ricketts, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, people confuse us all the time.
Right.
It's understandable.
I think it's the accents. Yeah.
Well, appreciated, Mr. Telle, in our meeting that you're tracking the proposed $1 billion cut to the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. As you may know, the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach are the busiest ports in the Western Hemisphere, receiving 40% of the nation's imports. There's other ports along the coast of California, but those two alone account for 40%. They're also considered donor ports, which generate nearly half the revenue into the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, but receive only a small fraction in return. Now, Congress directed the court to ensure a more equitable distribution of the trust funds in the 2020 WRDA, and finally, in the fiscal year 24 work plan, funding was made available. Can you provide, Mr. Telle, some assurances that that the HMTF obligations defined under WRDA 2020 will continue to be met this year and going forward, again, in that more equitable fashion?
Senator Padilla, thank you for the question, and you've identified an issue here that is important. The Congress and the executive branch have had debates, and the Congress has weighed in heavily on how revenues related to the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund are collected and expended. And Congress did recently enact a provision, as you referenced, that says for ports like the ones in your state, which have significant traffic but fewer dredging needs, that they have the ability to use Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund revenue and expenditures on non-traditional depth and width projects which help facilitate commerce in areas of a port where the Corps of Engineers hasn't traditionally worked. So I intend to follow the law in this regard, and certainly look forward to working with you on how the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund is managed.
And I very much appreciate your answer in regards to following the law, as current law is following the directions set by Congress. And I hate to even have to ask, but you know as well as I do what we've been through the last 4 months, where despite congressional action and not just authorization, but appropriations, we're dealing with an administration that sometimes thinks they know better and directs departments and agencies to do different. And so I believe you when you say you will stick to the letter of the law, and look forward to following up with you to ensure that, and on specific projects. Speaking of specific projects, the Los Angeles County Drainage Area Project is a dynamic flood conveyance system that provides flood risk benefits to the 10 million people living in Los Angeles County, and frankly, a larger number of people if you look at the greater metropolitan area. However, the Corps-owned and maintained portion of the system has a significant backlog of maintenance. Nothing new. You referenced the general dynamic earlier, which leaves the entire system vulnerable to extreme weather events. Now, the Corps' annual budget cannot keep up. It's not even coming close. And as a result, the County of Los Angeles Department of Public Works is currently engaged with the Corps to transfer some of the Corps-maintained sections of the system to ensure the long-term viability and safety of the critical system. Been working on this for a couple of years. Now, given the Corps' $100 billion backlog of authorized but unfunded projects, I'm encouraged when I see partners like Los Angeles County willing to step up and work together to address the challenges. As a member of this committee, I was proud to support provisions in WRDA's 2022 and 2024 to help address the operational efficiencies of the LA County drainage area system. So all that to be being said, my question is to have your commitment to work with me in Los Angeles County to ensure the seamless transfer of those assets to the county as has been agreed to.
Senator Padilla, thank you for your advocacy for this. As a general principle, I agree with the notion that federal responsibilities, to the degree that a state or locality has the capacity to deal with an issue or to operate a facility, we ought to be pushing authority and responsibilities and the fiscal burden to the local entity because they understand the needs of their citizens much better than we can here in Washington. And so in general, I agree with you on that principle. I don't have the details in terms of how this could affect the system of systems that is the California water system. I'd like to take a look at that, but I commit to taking a look at that and working with you on this to make sure that we get it right for the citizens of your state and, of course, the surrounding states in the West who all share water resources in a very careful manner.
Great. No, I share the rank and file and career professionals at the Corps have agreed this makes sense. We're in the process of doing it. It's been agreed to and hope that we seamlessly continue and finish the transfer process. A couple of other questions I'd love to ask. My time is up, so we'll submit questions for the record.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'll take over for the chair while she's voting. So, Senator Wicker.
Thank you, and very ably done, Mr. Interim Chair. Mr. Telle, let's talk about a wastewater treatment project that involves the state of Mississippi and the state of Tennessee. As everyone knows, Memphis and Shelby County amount to one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country and certainly the largest in the state of Tennessee. Just below Memphis and Shelby County is DeSoto County, Mississippi, one of the fastest growing counties in Mississippi, included abutting the state line are the cities of South Haven, Horn Lake, and certain unincorporated areas. About 48 years ago, a wastewater treatment facility was federally funded addressing the wastewater treatment needs in both of those areas. It was funded to the extent possible based on population numbers from the Mississippi area as well as the Memphis area. Some years ago, the folks north of the state line brought a suit and asked that the Mississippi customers be excluded from that treatment plan. This went to court. We didn't feel it was fair, but the federal judge ruled that the Mississippi areas, South Haven, Horn Lake, and certain unincorporated areas, have to get on their own water treatment system by the year 2031. Only way we can possibly do that is to look, as this metropolitan area did 50 years ago, to the federal government. The Army Corps of Engineers is a valuable part of this new project. Can you please commit to me that the Army Corps of Engineers do everything possible to assist the DeSoto County Regional Utility Authority, known as DECRUA, in building a new wastewater system before this judicially imposed 2031 deadline?
Senator Wicker, thank you for the question. It's an issue that I have familiarity with from both sides of the state line. In 1992, Congress began authorizing the Corps of Engineers to take on projects generally described as environmental infrastructure. These are not the traditional navigation, flood control, aquatic ecosystem restoration types of projects that the Corps of Engineers has done, but it's had a great deal of interest from the Congress. I think that's going to continue, and I certainly commit to work with you in an area in DeSoto County, Shelby County, that I know well, to make sure that we get it right and we can facilitate, to the degree that we're able, DeSoto County's ability to meet the directive of the courts.
I assume that if this project isn't done by 2031, the federal judge will not decree that sewage be start to run in the streets of DeSoto County, Mississippi. But we're going to try to, with your help, we're going to try to comply with this. Let's talk about the Bonnie Carey spillway. We've already talked about how long the Mississippi River is and the Missouri River. 31 states contribute to what runs by the state of Louisiana and Mississippi as it gets almost to the Gulf. By the time it gets there, it's full of bacteria, nutrients, fertilizer runoff, sediment, and other things that leads to algae blooms in the Gulf. When the water gets high, there are a number of spillways that can be opened to prevent flooding of a number of very important areas. In 2019, though, the Bonnie Carey spillway was opened for a total of 123 days. It spilled into the Mississippi Sound, a salt water important area for fishing. Changing it more into a freshwater is hugely damaging, costing many, many jobs. We can't possibly have this happen again. There are times when the spillway can be opened, take some of the fresh water into a saltwater area, but not that much. Will you agree that the Army Corps should include stakeholders such as the Mississippi Sound Coalition and stakeholders in both Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi in a comprehensive study of which spillways are open?
Senator Wicker, I would gladly take input from stakeholders. As you rightly point out, there are facilities up and down the Mississippi River from Birds Point to Morganza, and then the spillway of last resort, of course, is the Bonnie Carey, which diverts water into Lake Pontchartrain and ultimately, as you say, into the Mississippi Sound, which affects the ecosystem there, the commercial ecosystem, as well as the recreational ecosystem. These are the types of trade-offs that we have to discuss when we talk about operating the Corps of Engineers' many facilities. Preventing a flood upstream may mean effects, as you describe, on places like the Mississippi Sound. It is very important that the Corps of Engineers has clear input from stakeholders from across a waterway, from up and down, to understand the impacts. These are complex systems of systems, and we could use as much input as we could possibly get to try to make sure that we get the balance right.
Thank you for that answer. And Mr. Chairman, I realize we've gone over, but it is a matter of thousands and thousands of jobs up and down the Mississippi River. Thank you.
Senator Blunt Rochester.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the nominees and your families for being here. I would like to start with Mr. McMaster. Thank you for the opportunity to meet. When we were in my office, you indicated your willingness to be transparent about the status of discretionary grants in my state if confirmed. And I'm sure you've mentioned that Secretary Duffy recently shared the grant obligation announcements. Missing from that list were any projects in Delaware. And during his confirmation, he committed to getting discretionary grants out the door and abiding by the law. I'm sure this is an easy question for you. Will you make this same commitment?
Yes, Senator, absolutely. This is a tremendous priority for the administration and the secretary. You have my full commitment, if I'm confirmed, to support the secretary in those efforts and to look into any specific projects you may have and follow up with you directly.
Great, thank you so much. I made a point during my meeting with him as well that this funding was already awarded, much of it, and I understand that we're re-reviewing some of the grants, and so I hope, again, for me, that's not as efficient. So I'm looking forward, and I'm grateful for your commitment. Appreciate that commitment, and we will follow up. My next question is for Mr. Busterud. If confirmed, you'll oversee EPA's Superfund program, and as of now, there are over 1,300 sites on the Superfund's national priorities list. Delaware has 17 sites spread across our state. Given your commitment to putting public health and the environment at the center of your work, and the limited resources for a very complex program, how will you prioritize the completion of Superfund projects under your leadership?
Well, Senator, thank you. I am committed to protecting human health and the environment, as I told your staff during the visit. I am going to make a priority in enhancing and improving the pace and efficiency of our Superfund cleanups. And there are two essential components there. One is a suite of process improvements we can make. There's opportunities for that. I spoke with Senator Ricketts in his office yesterday about that very issue. Providing enhanced project management tools to the regions so that they can explore ways in which we can take phases of the remedial investigations and move them in parallel rather than in sequence. And there's also great opportunities for using AI in producing reports and not necessarily spending time drafting documents, ab initio, if you will. But I want to say, too, in addition to those enhancements, I want to acknowledge to this committee that there's a human element to Superfund. Superfund affects children, families, communities, tribes, businesses, and their employees. And I know, if confirmed, I am going to make that a priority for me in terms of implementation. I know our dedicated career staff feels that way, and I look forward to working with them and with the communities we serve.
Thank you for that commitment as well. Mr. Telle, I, as a former staffer, was impressed by Mr. Haggerty acknowledging everyone around this room. And so I'm sure they are proud and inspired. Delaware, as you probably know, is the lowest lying state in the country, which makes the Army Corps' work critical to us as a state. And affordability criteria and the high federal cost share are critical to helping our local communities, like those in my state, mitigate disaster risk. This approach has been essential to funding beach nourishment and restoration projects across the Delaware Bay beach communities, and that really gets inland as well. Mr. Telle, if confirmed, do you commit to following affordability criteria and including a high federal cost share in order to protect local communities?
Senator Blunt Rochester, thank you for your comments. You raise a very important issue, and part of the reason that I'm so honored to have been nominated for this position is because the Corps of Engineers mission reaches into the smallest communities in America and some of the biggest cities and has an impact on all of them in a very real way. And oftentimes it's reaching to the small communities, in many cases economically disadvantaged communities over the course of history, along the Mississippi River, along the coast, along the tributaries. These communities may not have the capacity that the larger communities have, and that's why it's incumbent upon the Corps, as it works with these communities, which are very important, to provide technical assistance along the way, and where necessary, tailor the cost share to meet the community's needs as appropriate, and of course with care for the federal taxpayer as well. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. I have additional questions on brownfields, reconnecting communities, the Port of Wilmington and dredging, but I will submit those questions for the record. I also am in a Commerce Committee hearing on FAA right now, and so I think I heard Mr. McMaster mention that your son is an air traffic controller.
Yes, that's correct.
Tell him thank you. Thank you on behalf of our country. I yield back.
Appreciate that. I will. Thank you.
Senator Bozeman. Thank you so much. First of all, I want to congratulate Mr. Telle on his being nominated to lead the Corps. I had the opportunity to work with him. Actually, I felt like I worked for him on Homeland Security. I was the chairman, he was the staff director. He did a tremendous job, and I know he's going to bring that same work ethic again in leading the Corps, and really believe that he's the right person for this position. As you know, Ebbing Air National Guard Base in Fort Smith, Arkansas was selected as the home of the F-35 Foreign Military Sales Training Mission. The recent passage of the fiscal year 25 full-year continuing resolution includes funding to enable important construction projects that the Little Rock Corps is doing, responsible under tight timelines. And I have to compliment them. They've done a tremendous job so far in working so hard to expedite this. This is something that's kind of been an all-hands-on-deck approach. But if confirmed, will you commit to ensuring the Little Rock District receives the Corps' full support and resources to deliver these mission-critical projects on schedule to the highest standard?
Senator Bozeman, thank you very much, first of all, for the compliment. I appreciate it. And I absolutely worked for you. The first time I came into your office, I saw a sign on your desk that said Arkansas first, and we followed that practice at all times. Senator, with regard to the Little Rock District, I commit to working with you to make sure that congressional intent, your interests, the interests that have been identified to you by your constituents are met. We visited Arkansas when I was working with you, and I look forward to visiting the Little Rock District if confirmed.
Very good. And again, I want to publicly thank them for their doing a really good job up to now in pushing things forward. In 2024, the Corps of Engineers recreation sites welcomed approximately 260 million visitors nationwide, including Corps-managed lakes and parks in Arkansas and throughout the country. These sites are vital to local economies, providing safe, affordable access to public lands for fishing, boating, and camping. Yet many sites face aging infrastructure and deferred maintenance. Fees collected on site most of the time aren't reinvested where they're generated. I know that the Corps has, its missions and this and that, but again, this has grown to a tremendous extent. And the problem is, you fix things and you prevent them from getting bad. It doesn't cost a whole lot of money. You let them go, and eventually they have to be replaced, and it costs a fortune. So if confirmed, would you prioritize helping us figure out a better path forward so that we can maybe take some of the burden off, things like public-private partnerships, thinking outside the box. And then also maybe looking at the fact that, again, these are generating money for the Corps, seeing if we can keep a percentage of that money in the areas where they're generated.
Senator Bozeman, thank you for the question, and you've hit the nail on the head here. The Corps of Engineers facilities actually have more annual visitors than the National Park System, and this is of great benefit to the public. It is not a primary mission of the Corps of Engineers, as you have identified, but it is a secondary mission, and certainly when the Corps of Engineers takes on projects, there are often recreational benefits that come alongside those projects that don't add significant additional funding to the cost of the project. And so we need to be smart in trying to meet these needs. And when it comes to maintaining and operating and improving these recreational facilities, I do look forward to working with you, and I hope it's in a creative way to help solve the issue you've identified.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. McMaster, very quickly, as you're aware, the U.S. has 35,000 injuries, 1,000 fatalities, from roughly 100,000 work zone crashes each year. How does U.S. DOT plan to improve worker safety? Have you got any ideas about worker safety and work zone awareness in these areas to try and
Senator,
get the numbers down?
you highlight an extremely important issue that the Federal Highway Administration faces, and the department recently just honored work zone work zone safety. I'll say I look forward to, upon confirmation, getting briefed up by the Federal Highway Administration on kind of the current challenges, where the data is. I look forward to working with the Congress directly to resolve and improve our work zone safety challenges that we have throughout the country. But you raise an important point. It is not something that has been solved to date, and we need to continue to work to protect those critical workers as they build out our infrastructure across the country.
Thank you very much. Thank all of you for your willingness to serve.
Senator Alson Brooks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And thank you as well to each of the nominees today. Congratulations to you and to your families on your nominations. The three offices that you're being considered for are really critical to Maryland, and so I'm excited to have the chance to ask some questions today. I'll start with Mr. McMaster and ask you a question regarding the university transportation centers. Last week, the U.S. Department of Transportation actually terminated grants for 7 university transportation centers related to advancing a so-called quote-unquote woke agenda. I understand that Johns Hopkins University, which is one of the 7 universities impacted, had, however, already revised its work plans to align with the administration's priorities, and these grants required a dollar-for-dollar match, meaning that the universities made significant financial and institutional commitments, and they did so based on the promise of a 5-year federal partnership. And so I'm concerned not just about the terminations themselves, but how it was handled and the justification that was provided, and what this says about the federal government's willingness to honor its commitments. So the question is, given that some of the universities have already revised their work plans and others have expressed a willingness to do so, can you commit today to working with these institutions to reverse the terminations and instead pursue a path that allows these universities to fulfill their mission under the revised, mutually agreeable terms?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I understand how important this issue is to you. I'm not familiar with the recent terminations of those, so I can commit to you, if I'm confirmed, to following up directly with the Federal Highway Administration and the Secretary and the Department to understand more fully what the justifications and what the interests were in that, and then happy to follow up with you directly to address this issue.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Mr. McMaster, just one other question regarding Maryland's, the freezing of some funds. Maryland's aging bridge infrastructure presents for us a really significant challenge, and there are several critical structures requiring attention and investment. And for this reason, the Bridge Investment Program, which was established under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, is really, really important to our state. The Trump administration froze this program at the beginning of the year and then quickly reinstated the program. The freezing of funds caused confusion, as you might imagine, uncertainty, and it also added to some project delays. So if confirmed, can you commit that the Federal Highway Administration will keep congressionally appropriated federal funds flowing?
Yes, Senator, I appreciate the question. I can confirm, if I'm confirmed, I can commit to you that I will carry out these programs in accordance with the law and the intent of Congress.
Thank you. And then third, Mr. Telle, I want to ask you a question as well about sustainability and climate resilience projects. Many of Maryland's Army Corps projects are related to climate change and are designed to enhance resilience, and the Baltimore district in particular is currently working on projects that mitigate risks from sea level rise, coastal storms, and flooding. And I suspect that you have familiarity with similar projects, given your time working in both Mississippi and Alabama's congressional delegation. So if confirmed, the question is whether or not you would commit to working with my office to ensure that Maryland's congressionally authorized Army Corps projects that focus on sustainability and climate resilience are completed.
Senator, thank you for the question. With regard to climate resiliency, it's a question of, for the Corps of Engineers, the policy, the Corps of Engineers doesn't set the policy on why or the root cause of a particular project. It only looks at the data, the latest hydrological trends, the real hard information to make decisions about how to plan projects for now and for the future so that they can make states like Maryland more resilient. And I absolutely commit to following congressional intent and working with you on advancing the projects that are important to your state.
All right, thank you. I yield to Senator Husted.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. I know that you will hear from me what will be a broken record, that is, time is money. The faster we go, the more money we save, the more quickly we begin to improve life. You each have roles that impact the environment and the economy, and the faster we get to solutions on the problems that you are addressing, the better off we'll all be. If you take the previous 4 years, although the latest inflation numbers show that inflation is at a low for the past 5 years, but if you take the previous 4 years, the average inflation rate was 5%. That's a 20% cost increase over the previous 4 years. So that is illustrative of my point about how quickly we make these decisions. The more money we save, the more quickly that we can improve our environmental circumstances. Mr. Busterud, I want to bring this to you, and I know there was just an announcement on PFAS this morning, which I saw some of the details, and so it's hard for me to digest all that has happened. But I first became aware of PFAS through the Telle Institute in Ohio, which has done a lot of work on this issue in terms of PFAS destruction through their annihilator technology. But with PFAS, for example, it has a dramatic health impact, which can cause cancers and other health challenges for people. Tell me about your plans to fast track that evaluation and get some of these new technologies in place as quickly as possible so that we can get PFAS out of our water systems.
Yes, Senator, I couldn't agree more that it's an urgent issue. We, as part of OLM's role in the whole of EPA approach to PFAS, which Administrator Zeldin announced last month, we are committed to providing destruction guidance on a much more frequent basis than we had historically. We were doing it every 3 years, and we're going to be doing it at least annually going forward. If confirmed, I commit to working with our staff to ensure that we are, and our scientists, our OLM scientists, to ensure that we are considering and providing guidance on emerging technologies that have real promise.
Well, I appreciate that. It is it was originally, I mean, it's just amazing how quickly the technology can be developed, and we just got to get the technology deployed and the guidance out there as quickly as possible. So all that you can do in that respect, I think, is in all of our best interests. Mr. McMaster, I'll, again, with the theme of time is money, you mentioned the Brent Spence Bridge, which is, of course, when we had a chance to talk, I believe the last bridge that was built across the Ohio River took 13 years, 10 years to design and permit, and 3 to build. And so with all of these construction projects, particularly with bridges, can you just give us a sense of confidence and direction about what you're going to be able to do to improve the speed with which these projects get completed, and then what advice you have for us as this process moves along on how we can help you?
Yes, Senator, I appreciate the commentary. I also appreciate you brought up inflation. I have that in my testimony. The last 3 years reported on the National Construction Cost Index from the Federal Highway Administration shows that there's been a 67% increase alone in construction for infrastructure projects. So,
and the states, that affects the state revenue. They've been challenged with this. I know in Ohio we had a plan, but inflation ate into the cost so much that now the funding mechanisms are not sufficient for the plan.
Oh, absolutely. There's a tremendous impact in the ability to deliver these projects in a timely way. And then ultimately, you deliver less projects as a result of the inflationary pressures on those. What I will say as far as expediting project delivery, I mean, you couldn't have a more supportive administration in this effort. I know the Secretary has a tremendous effort underway to take these thousands of grant awards and move them to grant agreements. As part of that process, there is a review and a process to reduce the regulatory burden where there are not statutory demands and intent of Congress. He is taken it upon himself to clean up those grant awards so that the ultimate project awardee can move those projects quicker, faster, better. So you have a tremendous advocate in the administration. Upon confirmation, I look forward to supporting his efforts strongly to expedite that backlog to completion and support you all as you consider additional opportunities for streamlining projects and accelerating project delivery under your reauthorization proposal.
Great. Thank you very much. Sorry I didn't get a chance for you to give your speed, time is money remarks, but Chairwoman Capito, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for taking the gavel there. We're all running back and forth today. So Senator Kelly, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Telle, good seeing you again. Thanks for coming by my office. I want to talk about some priority infrastructure projects that we have in Arizona. First, as we discussed in my office, we talked about Winslow, the Winslow Levee project. The Army Corps of Engineers is constructing this new levee system that'll remove the town of Winslow from a 100-year floodplain. This project's authorized and it's fully funded under the bipartisan infrastructure law, and they have the local match. Will you commit to ensuring that the Corps moves as quickly as possible to complete this infrastructure project?
Senator, of course, we will follow, if confirmed, I'll follow the law and work with you and your constituents to make sure we provide that facility as quickly as we possibly can.
Thank you. And then second, in last year's WRDA bill, we secured some new emergency authorities for the Army Corps to ensure that the Corps can exercise your regulatory authorities differently in regions experiencing drought. What I'm talking about are the flood control curves that we discussed. These changes have the potential to save hundreds of thousands of acre-feet of water in certain years in the West. Will you commit to working with my office to ensure that the Corps' implementation guidance reflects congressional intent so the Corps moves quickly to respond to conditions in drought-stricken regions?
Senator Kelly, thank you for the question. As I've testified today on a number of occasions, the primary missions of the Corps of Engineers are navigation, flood control, and aquatic ecosystem restoration. Water supply can be a secondary mission of the Corps, but I think I would point out the provision that you worked to include in a recent WRDA bill that said in times of drought emergency, there can be an exception made to that policy. I think it makes sense, especially for communities in areas like your state that at times can be so desperate for water. And so I look forward to working with you to make sure that we follow the law and get that provision implemented, the guidance and the rulemakings and other processes that are required to bring that to bear. I look forward to working with you to make sure we get it right.
Thank you. And then finally, we also talked about Rio de Flag, which is another flooding issue in Flagstaff, Arizona. And so we've got this project. It's downtown Flagstaff. It's been funded. Phase 1 of the project should be ready for construction next year, but we may run into a issue with the 902 limit. If a post-authorization change report is required for this project, will you commit to working with the City of Flagstaff to find a way to continue advancing Phase 1 of the project without delay?
Senator, thank you for the question, and I look forward to learning more about the change that you describe, and certainly across the board, as has been discussed on numerous occasions here today, and the senator right before you made the point that time is money, and I'm sure that's the case in this project too. So I look forward to working with you, and I commit to doing everything we can to get it right, even with changes.
And if a Packer is required, will you commit to ensuring that the report is completed as quickly as possible so that it's provided to Congress in time for WORD of 2026?
Senator, thank you for that question as well. And this is another topic that I think I've heard on a bipartisan basis is of interest, which is even if whether we like the answer you're going to give us or not, give us an answer. And I believe in that. And so I look forward to trying to be transparent and clear with you about the progress of the projects of interest to you, and so that even if the answer is not something that you would have preferred, you can potentially work to mitigate the concerns that may exist.
Well, thank you, Mr. Telle. And then, Mr. McMaster, thanks for coming by my office as well. When we met, we discussed this 22nd Street Bridge project in Tucson. It's a classic example of the type of project which Congress, on a bipartisan basis, intended to fund when we passed the bipartisan infrastructure law. This project replaces this aging bridge over Union Pacific's main rail line that goes east to west through Tucson. And right now, the bridge is in such poor shape that, as we talked about, school buses, ambulances don't go over it. The city of Tucson has submitted a draft grant agreement to the Federal Highways Administration for their review, which included all of the NEPA documents and utility and right-of-way clearances, yet the city has not yet received any feedback on this submitted documentation since December, and they have not been able to meet with anybody, and I know you're not in the building yet, but anybody with the staff. But if confirmed, will you commit to prioritizing completing finalized grant agreements that have been caught up in this haphazardly implemented funding freeze, like the 22nd Street Bridge?
Yes, Senator, I appreciated the conversation in your office. I will commit to you that I look forward to supporting the Secretary in his efforts to move these projects from award to agreement as quickly and expeditiously as possible. Lives and money are impacted with any possible delay. As it relates to this specific project, I look forward to following up with the Federal Highway Administration on the current status of that effort, and then I will follow up with you directly afterwards.
And will you also commit that your office will follow the law and implement any other discretionary grant programs as Congress intended?
I commit to following the law with the intent of Congress.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the witnesses and your families for your service. Mr. Telle, you're a glutton for punishment. A lot of folks don't know you had your Armed Services confirmation hearing yesterday, so you did a great job in that one. So this should be a piece of cake.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan.
By the way, in my state, I'm going to focus a lot on Alaska. I appreciated our meetings, Mr. Telle and Mr. McMaster. Hard to build anything in Alaska, right? You want to build a road, a sidewalk, you usually get, 12 radical far-left environmental groups that sue to stop. We had the King Cove Road. We've only been trying to get that done for 40 years, a 9-mile, single-lane gravel road that every Democrat in the country, including, God rest his soul, Jimmy Carter, writes op-eds, can't build a road in Alaska. And then it went so bad, we had the Biden administration's last frontier lockup. My great state suffered through 70 executive orders and executive actions from the Biden administration, singularly focused on Alaska. I like ripping this up because that's not the issue anymore. We now have President Trump, who issued his day one executive order called Unleashing Alaska's Extraordinary Resource Potential. And Mr. Telle, as you and I discuss, there's a lot of great provisions in here. This is all about getting things done in Alaska, not crushing us, as the radical left wants to do. And there's a really good provision about the Corps of Engineers. I'm going to read it to you. The Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, that's you, shall immediately review, revise, or rescind any agency action that may in any way hinder, slow, or otherwise delay any critical project in the state of Alaska. That's from the president. So will you commit to abide by that very expansive provision to get things done in my great state after, 4 years of being crushed by the previous administration?
Senator Sullivan, absolutely. And when I visited your office, I tattooed the executive order that the president issued on Alaska on my heart. And
By the way, that's a great answer.
And I will go ahead and read the second paragraph to you from memory, which essentially says that I shall, if confirmed, coordinate as closely with the governor of Alaska as any human could possibly coordinate.
Good. And the senator from Alaska.
Of course.
Yeah, okay, just double checking on that. We talked about the Juneau Glacial Lake outburst flooding. You want to talk about a unique issue in Alaska? We've had this flooding that pretty much happens now every summer. It's amazing it hasn't killed anybody, and we need the Corps' help, right? This is a unique challenge. It's uniquely, the Corps is uniquely qualified to help us. You can't have flooding. I went and toured where this happened this past summer. Over 200 homes were flooded. This is, we got to fix it. And the Corps initially said when I went to them, well, Senator, we're going to work on this. We think it'll be 10 years to study and fix this. Say what? That is the wrong answer. Can you commit to me and really importantly the citizens of Juneau, Alaska, that the Corps is going to bring its best minds in a very, very rapid way to help address this unique challenge that we really need the Corps' help on?
Senator Sullivan, thank you for the question, and I did fail to mention as a part of my answer to your previous question that Alaska is home to greater than 60% of the U.S.'s wetlands. And so it makes the work of the Corps of Engineers critically important, thus the need for the executive order. With regard to the glacial outbursts issue in Juneau, you rightly point out that this is an issue that is brand new, as far as I understand it to be, in terms of flood risk management, and it's going to require creativity.
Yes, it is.
And the Corps of Engineers was made to solve tough problems, and so I look forward to working with you, with the surrounding communities, to try to solve this challenge.
Great, thank you. In an expedited manner, not 10 years. That's just...
In an expedited manner, Senator.
Thank you. You and I talked about the Ambler Road, the Port of Nome, so I'll just submit questions for the record. The Port of Nome has got bipartisan support. We don't have an Arctic port anywhere to push back on the Russian and Chinese aggression in my part of the state. That project, it's really important. We got to get over the finish line. Can I get your commitment to work with me and the others in this committee on that project? And that's an interesting project. I mentioned you had your SASC hearing yesterday. That's EPW, and that's very much DOD to be able to have Navy ships, icebreakers, be able to pull up to the Port of Nome. We don't have a port in the Arctic right now that can handle Navy ships and icebreakers.
Senator Sullivan, one of the most strategic issues that confronts the United States of America today is our status as an Arctic and Antarctic nation. This is an area of the world that the Chinese Communist Party is very interested in. The Russians are very active. Your state is front and center to the United States of America's being an Arctic nation. We must be. And it seems to me that if we're going to be an Arctic nation, that Alaska ought to be one of the key launching points of that force projection and power projection and economic projection. And so I look forward to working with you to help make the case for the strategic nature of Alaska and the Port of Nome as it relates to the United States asserting itself as an Arctic nation.
Great. That's a great answer. I really appreciate your expertise on that. Finally, I'm going to submit, Madam Chair, for the record, a number of other questions. Just, Mr. McMaster, I mentioned to you, we're a resource-rich, infrastructure-poor state. We have less road miles than Connecticut, and we're almost 120 times bigger. If Senator Whitehouse were here, I would say we're 491 times bigger than Rhode Island. He doesn't like when I say that, but it's true. So can I get your commitment to work with Alaska, this committee, our delegation, on permitting reform, but also on just helping us build, right? We need more roads to resources. We need more roads to help our economy be stronger. And that will help Alaska, but when you unlock the resources of Alaska, it helps America.
Yes, Senator, absolutely. I know the Federal Highway Administration has a strong partnership with the state of Alaska. If I'm confirmed, I look forward to looking for ways to even strengthen that.
And for the record, we also have a couple grants on infrastructure from the infrastructure bill that have been frozen, and I'd like to work with you and your team on just getting these unfrozen. I've talked to Secretary Duffy about it, but can I get your commitment on that as well?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Lummis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Telle, first of all, congratulations on your nomination to oversee the Army Corps of Engineers. When in Wyoming, we deal with the Corps so much, we just call them the Corps, and everybody knows what we're talking about when we talk about the Corps. And right at the moment, we don't have any front page news projects with the Corps like my colleague from Alaska does. Did you call it a glacial outburst, or?
Yeah, it's a very unique challenge that it's almost like a glacier burping every summer, and it floods in huge ways. It's a real challenge, and we don't have that in a lot of I don't think West Virginia has glacial outburst issues.
No, it's a spectacular.
We have outbursts, but they're not glacial.
It's a spectacular country in that way, that it's so diverse. But of course, if you're trying to administer programs at the federal government level, it creates real challenges because of the nuances and uniquenesses of this great country. So I'll just let you know that we do have some ongoing Corps needs and some potential projects in the pipeline, and I'll look forward to working with you on those when they arise.
Senator Lummis, I look forward to it as well. And as you clearly articulate, the wonderful thing about the position I've been nominated for is that it does reach into every corner of America, Wyoming, West Virginia, Alaska, and I look forward to working with you on issues important to Wyoming.
Thank you. And now, Mr. McMaster, good morning. Roads really are the lifeline of Wyoming. We have very little airplane traffic, obviously very little waterborne traffic. It's a state that is road dependent. And so I think we'll be spending a lot of time together. And thanks for your willingness to serve in this capacity. It's a critical infrastructure in this country. The fact that you have Arizona roots helps you understand how vast our distances are, how challenging our terrain is, how extreme our weather can be. I know that's true in Arizona. It's very much more true in Wyoming. So I, for one thing, can see that you understand how EV mandates don't work in Wyoming. Our elevations, our cold weather, and the distances that we have to travel just make EV mandates unworkable. But there's 450 miles that I travel from my farm to my ranch. One, I can see the Idaho border from the farm, and I'm very close to the Colorado and Nebraska border on the ranch. And I travel between them. I can't get between them on an EV charge. And so it is just not a practical solution for Wyoming. Additionally, you appreciate that Wyoming has a really short construction season. And that means projects can't afford to wait on federal approvals or disbursements to get underway. We have this very, very narrow window for a construction season, and it creates a unique challenge for Wyoming, even more unique than you might see in our adjacent states of Montana and Colorado. So there are a couple projects that are very, very front and center. Currently, the Wyoming Department of Transportation is seeking reimbursements for the Green River Tunnel on I-80. There was an absolutely horrific crash in that tunnel that did a great deal of damage to the tunnel. And that tunnel is used by commercial truck traffic in mass every single day of the year. The other one is the Teton Pass issue. There's tremendous traffic between Driggs, Idaho, and Jackson, Wyoming. Nobody can afford to live in Jackson. And the millionaires have now pushed the billionaires out of Jackson. Well, I would have said that, but now the billionaires are coming down to Star Valley, where I am, because they want to get away from the millionaires, and there are so many more millionaires, so it's just the nuttiest place. But none of the people that are providing accommodations and services to these millionaires can afford to live there. So they're driving either from Star Valley, where I am, up to Jackson on the roads, or they're going over Teton Pass from Driggs, Idaho to work in Jackson. And that road sloughed off. It just slid away. And we have a temporary fix, but the permanent fix for Teton Pass will be coming to your attention, and I'll look forward to working with you on that. Again, I want to commend you for your willingness to serve, your family's willingness to allow you to serve and support your service. You have a really strong transportation background, both in policy and administration, that are going to serve our country well. You've got to work with the states. You've got to trust the states. Our administrators really do know, boots on the ground, what the issues are they have to deal with, and can help guide you in how to help us, the old help me help you. So I want to ask you if you could take the remaining minute to talk about your priorities for FHWA.
Senator, I appreciate those comments, and I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I look forward to, if I'm confirmed, working closely with the Wyoming Department of Transportation, but all states around the country. As far as my priorities for the FHWA, I think I look at it in four ways. The first and obviously the most important is to support the Secretary in his refocused mission on safety. I think that's critical, and I expect, if I'm confirmed, that the Federal Highway Administration will additionally strongly support that effort in a refocused manner. And the second priority for me would be to advance expediting project delivery as quickly as possible. It's been raised multiple times here today, but time is money as it relates to moving projects forward. There's limited resources available. The longer it takes, the fewer projects we're actually able to realize. And so I would like to support the Secretary in his efforts to address the backlog initially while he's reducing regulatory burden on our project awardees so that we can realize quicker, faster, more cost-effective projects and actually build rather than say we're going to build and move paper around. My third priority would be to strongly assist your critical work here in Congress as you look to reauthorize the Surface Transportation Bill. I have an acute appreciation for what that may require for you all, and I want to make sure that you understand that the Federal Highway Administration, if I'm confirmed, will be a resource for you as you consider many different aspects of what that will mean. And then the fourth component, I think, for as a priority for me would be to make sure that the different viewpoints and the unique needs around this country are well reflected in the federal policy at the USDOT. So I look forward to supporting you all. Those would be my top kind of four areas of priority, but you know, it's an honor to potentially serve, and if I'm confirmed, I look forward to following up with you on those priorities and any other concerns or issues or priorities of your own you may have.
Well, thank you, and I might mention one more priority I have, which is commercial truck parking. Obviously, with Department of Labor limits on how long you can stay behind the wheel, 18-wheelers are struggling for places to park when they time out. And so another member of this committee, the senator from Arizona, and I are working on that together. We'll look forward to those conversations with you as well. Thank you all, panel. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Senator Lummis, and I want to thank the panelists, and it's been a busy day in and out, but I'm sure you're well aware of other obligations. I would ask unanimous consent to enter into the record letters of support for all of the nominees today. Without objection, so ordered. So with no further questions, I would like to thank you, as I just did, and also my colleagues for the participation this morning. Senators who wish to submit written questions for the record have until 5 p.m. next Wednesday, May 21st. Gosh, is it almost May 21st? Gee, it's to do so. The nominees' responses to these questions are due back in the committee no later than 5 p.m. on Wednesday, May 28th, and will be admitted for the record. With that, this hearing is adjourned, and thank you all very much, and thank the families. Thank you.